We're excited to talk about the Bible and want to be faithful to examine as much of the text as possible. Unfortunately, we can't cover everything in a Sunday sermon, and lots of study and material get left on the cutting room floor. These episodes are our attempt to continue the conversation and cover as much of the Bible as we can. So welcome to the cutting room floor.
I think before we get into the real meat of what's going on in First Samuel, you talked a little bit about Balaam and the donkey, and there's kind of I think that there's a curious clue to me. I guess it's becoming one of those things where I'm noticing it when I see it.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that we watch for is when the angel of the Lord appears.
Yeah.
But particularly for me, when he appears with a sword in his hand, always seems to be pretty significant.
Yeah.
Do you know more about that?
I think it's a direct indication of his authority, and linked obviously very closely to his justice.
Yeah.
That there is judgment or action denoted in the appearance of the sword. I think it's also interesting that the sword is barring someone's way.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
Always. It seems to be. The sword in the garden is barring the way in. The sword with Balaam is obviously blocking the way of the donkey, who then speaks to Balaam. Then we have also the sword with Joshua.
Yeah.
Which would maybe not be barring a way necessarily. However,
but there is judgment about to
There is a judgment that's about to come.
Yeah.
And the way is not barred as much as maybe like Joshua's thinking is barred. Because like, again, the answer is, are you for us or are you for them? Neither. I'm for the Lord. And so, it seems like there's always at least judgments indicated there, but it seems like the sword in God's hand always has something to do. I shouldn't say always. So far, there's a repeating pattern.
Yeah.
Hey, hold on.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was trying to look up other instances, like, well, where else does this happen? And isn't there one where it comes up post David giving like a census when he's told he shouldn't? The Lord appears again there before him, or like I think it says like in the clouds with his sword outstretched over.
Let's see. Let me ask that question for some specific clarity, because that would be Second Samuel would be that story, I believe.
Would be in Kings? I don't know.
I think Kings. I think David dies in 1 Kings chapter 2.
Oh, okay.
And then the rest of it is all the rest of the Kings. Yeah. Okay. Is the angel of, I'm asking our trusty Logos software here, is the angel of the Lord holding a sword during David's plague?
And then the other one that immediately jumped to my mind is Revelation talks about the sword from his mouth.
That's right.
It's just one of those details that I think is meant to mean something, meant to communicate something.
Swords extended over Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Yeah, during the plague sent upon Israel as punishment for David's census. And David witnesses the angel standing between heaven and earth with a drawn sword, which, could be an indication of God holding back. I think about like what Jesus says, I could command, I can't remember the number of legions, but there's a number of legions that he says I could command to do this thing right now. But I'm not going to do that. I wonder if that's like akin to or similar to this moment.
That's an interesting way to look at it, because I would think of it as initially he's showing his authority, the sword is extended, judgment is coming. But if you view it as a barring of the way,
I don't know. I could be making something up right now, but that's just been something I've been thinking about.
No, that's
anytime the sword pops up.
Yeah. Okay.
There could be. Maybe that's my PhD work. Maybe that'll be my PhD.
Great. Sounds good.
I've never seen anything about the sword in particular.
Okay.
But it at least means judgment. It at least means that God's showing up with some severity here. So
okay.
I forget. So you were asking the original thread on this was Balaam.
Yes.
What was the particular question on that?
I was just noticing that this is an instance where the angel of the Lord appears but he's not just addressing a person or revealing himself or making himself known. Like, doesn't it seem like he could have just as easily appeared without a sword in his hand and barred the
Yeah.
way or whatever? And so I was looking for, and I think you said it right, what is it communicating when that detail's there? That there is a barring of the way. And I think you're right, that there is sort of when we just got done reading it in Joshua, there is a block in the way of Joshua's thinking.
At least that.
Yeah.
If not also the command for Joshua to consecrate the people for 3 days
Oh, yeah.
before they go and do anything. I'm trying to remember when that comes in the story. It might come right before his encounter with the angel of the Lord, but like there is a stop.
Uh-huh.
Like before you continue on into the conquest narratives, there's this consecrate yourself for 3 days before you cross. So it is before you cross the Jordan.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And I can't remember if there's another round of this after or if it's a part of.
I hadn't picked up on that detail because the other times that they've done that have been like as the people approach the mountain of the Lord,
Right,
they've
right.
also had to. So as they're entering the land, there's kind of this preparation that has to happen.
Yeah, it's like a subtle take your sandals off,
Yeah.
kind of reference. It's like
Yeah.
this is a holy thing that's happening, so, prepare yourself for it.
Yeah. Well, he has a sword in his hand. Take your sandals off.
Like, wow.
Okay, yeah, that was just you led off with Balaam. I think because that was pertaining to
The Moabite.
the Moabites. Yes, which is what we've come out of with Ruth.
Yep.
It was a great segue into where we're at in First Samuel, but it was something that kind of grabbed my attention, so I just wanted to pick your brain on it.
Yeah, and again, for those who maybe just first tuning in or didn't catch sermons, previous to this, that story is really, it seems to be more important than I had ever given it credit for.
Yeah.
In fact, the exclusion of the Moabites up to the 10th generation
Yeah.
is a curse. It's a pronouncement or a judgment, a ruling that comes from Moses because of what the Midianite and Moabite women were sent in to do, which was to sexually seduce the men to bring them into worship of other gods. So if Balaam can't accomplish it in the curses that he gives, well, then Balak, or Balak, the ruler of Moab, has another plan, and his plan B is the scheme of the women, and that works. It works so well, in fact, that God sends a plague on the people, such that they have to go to the tent of meeting to seek repentance. That's what Moses and crew do. They gather in front of the tabernacle, and as they're doing that, one of these Midianite women and a man named Zimri are essentially flaunting their disobedience, their rebellion to God, in front of the camp. So they're not there doing the national repentance thing. They're continuing to do the thing that God is judging the nation for. Mm-hmm. So that's when Phinehas, one of the priests, one of Eleazar's descendants, who is one of the two sons of Aaron, who is the main high priest, the first high priest, one of Eleazar's descendants, Phinehas, the passage says that he was filled with zeal for the Lord. And so he goes and he pronounces similar Levitical judgment that we saw back in Exodus chapter 21, I believe it is. No, I apologize. Exodus chapter 32. At the end of the golden calf narrative, rally to me, all who are faithful to Yahweh. That's what Moses says. And it's the Levites that respond. And they go through the camp in a similar zealous passion for the Lord's name and glory, and they kill their brothers, the other tribes people of Israel. And that's what Phinehas also does. He's filled with zeal for the Lord, and he goes and he spears Zimri and the woman together while they are together in the tent. And because of that, God says now the priesthood is going to not just be generally Aaron's line, not just generally Eleazar's line, but it's going to be specifically through Phinehas's line. So when we open up to 1 Samuel, all of this is relevant because the first opening lines of Samuel are explosive legally and culturally speaking, because the Eli and his two sons, Hophni and a different Phinehas, which I think is an ironic naming, because he's not zealous for the Lord, he's zealous for his own, passions and desires. He's the opposite Phinehas from the first one. They are not a part of Eleazar or Phinehas's line. They're a part of Ithamar's line, who are Levites. They're supposed to be doing priestly thing or Levitical things, but not priestly
So
things.
is there a reason?
Well, it's ambiguous. It's ambiguous, so it's kind of a mystery. The text, I think, is doing this on purpose. It's giving us this ambiguous detail so that we would discern, we would use our context clues to know that, this is how bad the spiritual decay that we saw in the book of Judges, a bright spot in the book of Ruth, but generally speaking, nationally speaking, there's such spiritual decay that not only has the nation gone haywire and all this stuff, the priesthood itself is compromised.
Is that the hint you were talking about in the sermon?
Yes, that's kind of how I opened up the...
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, and a lot of that is just, it's a lot of legal stuff in there. But again, I think what it does is it opens up the reading for us as modern people. We can understand the drama, the political and religious drama that's occurring. It's one of those background set details that helps to, signal something to us.
And that's been kind of the pattern throughout. I mean, we started Genesis. As we're walking through the Old Testament, that's been my experience through, is that the drama, the stakes of everything is fairly high right from the get-go as we enter into whatever next chapter of the story we're in. Nothing's... it doesn't seem to be a lot of static time or lazily put together things. I think like the analogy we've used before is these are all the set pieces. These are the things that are paints the backdrop for you.
That's right.
And I don't know. I find it very delightful that it's like, oh wow, this isn't just a guy with a couple sons. Correct. We're supposed to be keyed into the time in which they're living in.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that we're still in the time of the judges, the very end of the time of the judges.
Samuel would be the final judge.
Which I had forgotten was there a particular phrase or word that was used describing Samuel that was the same as a judge?
Yeah.
Because I know he's functioning as a judge or a chief or however you wanted to put it. Is that a fair, concrete label we could put on him as far as...
Yeah. Also a prophet.
Yes, he kind of is doing a lot of work, actually.
But I think it would be so interesting if he was considered the last judge as we go into the kings of Israel.
Yeah, I can't remember which chapter it is. Hold on, here it is. It's chapter 7, verse 5. This is when the people assemble together because the ark is returned to Israel. Now, it's not in its correct location, but the ark has been returned by the Philistines, and Samuel gathers all of Israel together at Mizpah. And verse 6, I believe, says at the very end, we have sinned against the Lord. Now Samuel was serving as leader. Okay, well, that's going to be translated variously, but traditionally the word is judge.
Okay. Mine in the ESV says, and Samuel judged, fasted on that day, and then said and went on to do his thing.
Yeah, so he's considered the 13th judge, if you want to put it that way.
Okay.
So I think there's some like number significance here going on as well. But anyway, he's the final judge because he's the guy that's going to usher in the establishment of the kingdom. And he acts as, yes, you're right, Kevin, prophet, judge, and in some priestly kind of capacity as well, even if he's not fully.
So was Eli acting as high priest at that point?
Yes, he was.
Even though he wasn't of the right lineage?
Even though he's not of the right lineage, which again is a part of the issue.
So this segues really good into my next question. If we're saying that Samuel is operating as both prophet, judge, and priest, well, he's not eligible to be a priest. And so, again, I think, is this one of those moments where, similar as in Ruth, is it painting for us to hold individuals in contrast to each other, where it's like, okay, in a legalistic sense, neither of these priestly men are eligible, but Samuel has taken the Nazirite vow, right?
Well, he is. He lives by it because that is the initial vow that Hannah promises to have him live by if God will grant her a son.
As a lifelong oath? Because as far as I've understood it, someone can take that on for a time and then put it down, but his life is set apart.
Yeah, but I would say there's no indication from the text that he's never not.
Uh-huh.
So in contrast to Samson, who
Right.
would be like the last judge in the book of Judges, now we have a righteous judge who is living into or by his Nazarite vow, unlike Samson.
Okay, I have more stuff on Samson later because I think it's a very interesting
okay.
tie. So, like, what is a Nazarite again, and who can be one?
Anyone. That's the interesting thing about a Nazarite vow, is that you don't have to be a Levite or among the priestly lineage. You can take on a priestly. I don't know if priestly is the right. Maybe it's the right. You can take on a religious set of duties or actions,
Right.
that may not be I'm not doing the tabernacle function, but I'm operating and acting as a voice, like a priest would, like a prophet would.
Would it be the distinction maybe between, like, a priest does hold some sort of authority over the people? Would a Nazarite be doing, like, acts of service, but without those same?
Yeah, like they would be. So, like for instance, Paul takes a Nazarite vow.
Yeah.
Paul is not a priest. He's not in the priestly line. He's from the line of Benjamin. But he's taken on a zealous form of obedience to God, and he's doing a particular task that he believes is for the Lord. And the sign of that is his long hair, his uncut beard, those kinds of things.
And John does one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have different figures, but as far as I understand it, anyone can be like man or woman.
Man or woman.
Okay, which kind
Now,
of
I think. Well, hold on. We should fact check that. Let's fact check that while you.
because I've heard that, but yeah, there's a conversation around that.
Let's find out.
Because I think the reason why I wondered that is, they kind of pinged in my mind of like, I think I've heard that before, but what do you got?
Yeah.
Okay.
A woman can be a Nazarite.
Okay, so here's my question that leads into that is we have this description of Samuel and that he's going to be a Nazarite and all that stuff, take the Nazarite vow, in contrast to Eli's sons who are taking portions from the offerings to the Lord and having relations with the women who work in the tabernacle. And we don't know a whole lot about what those roles or duties would be. And I'm wondering, what does a person who is serving in the tabernacle, whether they're a Levite or not, look like if their job or role is to be in service to the Lord and the tabernacle?
Yeah.
Would these women be considered or possibly be Nazarites?
Potentially.
Is Nazarite even the right word, actually?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Because it's a particular kind of vow. But I don't know that these women are Nazarites.
Okay.
Because what we see from the time of Moses is that there were women who were the caretakers and what for whatever. Understand what I'm saying here? Cultic practice. I don't mean cult as in not for God, but I mean as far as like a temple duty or something like that. There's like religious practice associated with a particular kind of god. That would be cultic. So that's a descriptor. I'm not saying that it's a cult, but there are cultic practice or religious practices that the women who oversaw the mirrors that were at the front of the tent of meeting, and that practice isn't upheld. We don't really see that becoming a thing, being a maintained thing throughout the rest of the life of the kingdom, or once the kingdom gets established. Once it's the time of the judges, we don't really hear much about women being temple attendants, even though that was a part of the law, and even though we're definitely seeing it here in the time of Samuel.
So we don't have a record of that continuing, or are we just supposed to assume that it's supposed to happen? Because, like, these mirrors and stuff, does anyone know what those are for?
No.
But the only thing that I can think of is, like, well, when Jesus is giving an analogy of, like, it's like a man who sees himself in the mirror and does nothing, walks away. Is there some sort of thing, like, there's all this purification and making sure that you are properly prepared to enter the Lord's space. Is he pointing at that specifically? Is there something to do with these mirrors at the temple that is supposed to address, your conduct as you enter the Lord's space? And I guess that's just something to draw a question mark over because we don't know.
Well, yeah, we don't have well, how about this? We just don't have data from the text.
Okay.
We have inference to best explanation, and I think the inference to best explanation is that what the women are called, who Phineas and Hophni are with, they're temple attendants. So that means that they are performing some kind of function of the temple. Now, as to their level of authority or their abilities to do things in the tabernacle,
Right.
we can only speculate.
Yeah.
Because we only really get that data for the men who are performing those particular practices.
Huh. It's all very interesting.
So it's kind of ambiguous. It's kind of we just don't really know. Not kind of. It just is. We don't really know. We just know that there were Levite women who were temple attendants at one point.
So one more question around a Nazirite. When it comes to Jesus and being a Nazarene,
Yes.
is there a distinction there? Is it one and the same? How are we supposed to look at that?
No, I think that has to do with the
Is it
Nazareth.
locational?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
locational alone.
Right.
I don't think there is a particular we don't hear of Jesus taking a Nazarite vow.
But he will be known as a Nazarene,
Yes.
which I guess for me, the reason why I ask that is like, well, he's a Nazarene is someone who is set apart.
Right.
He's the most set apart person ever, you know?
Right.
And if he's hanging out with John all the time, and we know John takes a Nazarite vow, that's just what I'd wondered, you know?
But the interesting thing, talking about women, is Samuel, Samson, and John, they didn't take the vow, their mothers did. Basically.
Oh, that's interesting.
Say that again, Kevin.
Yeah.
Samuel, Samson, and John, all their mothers do it. Oh, that's good.
Wait, so you're saying that even John? I didn't have this detail in my brain. So John's mother,
He
Mary,
tells-
is also calling him into
No.
the Nazarite.
Elizabeth.
Oh, you mean John the Baptist? I don't know
I'm
why.
sorry.
I was thinking John
Yeah.
the Apostle.
I
Okay.
should specify.
Okay. No. No, I should have known.
Is that
Yeah.
pastor? No.
That is. You're right. You're right. That is Elizabeth.
Yeah.
That
She initiates that.
And they all had,
fascinating.
That's
they all had-
very good,
they all had
Kevin.
problems bearing children.
Kevin, come on.
Goodness. All these connections.
Well, you pointed it out kind of in the sermon.
But I didn't go to the New Testament. I wasn't thinking.
Okay.
I wasn't thinking that far ahead. Wow.
I looked it up, and those are the three main people. I was like, oh, they all...
All their mothers were responsible for their Nazarite vow.
Go ladies in the Bible.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of the landing point
Yeah.
for like what I'm trying to point out in the idea that there were women that were associated with the temple, and not just associated in the sense of like they were holy women or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, Hannah's like not a Nazarite. She's not a part of the temple system in any way.
Right.
She's a holy woman. Okay, but there's something distinct with I think the women that Hophni and Phineas are with, and earlier these women who were dealing with the mirrors in some way.
Yeah.
They are actual temple attendants. They're not just they're not just some righteous ladies or something like that. So there's a distinction.
Yeah.
What was your initial question though?
Oh, I was all over the place. I was asking like who's eligible to be a Nazarite, who can take the vow. Are we meant to assume that these women in service are? Is Jesus a Nazarene or a Nazarite? Are those two different things? I had like 5 different questions.
Well, I think that Jesus being let me verify here, but I don't think there's any association with Nazareth and Nazarite. I think
Okay.
those are two different distinct things.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, but let me double check.
Okay. Because that sounds familiar to me. I think you're right on that. But
But if there is,
Confirm.
let's have our minds blown.
yeah.
Because to me this is fun.
Yeah.
No, there's no direct etymological or religious link between them.
So linguistic accident.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Must be some kind of name.
Or coincidence, not accident.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And no, Jesus does not take any Nazarite vow that we are aware of.
Okay.
Because Jesus drinks wine.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Check that box.
I read that, so that's not.
Okay.
Talking about women serving in the temple, it
Yes.
made me think of Anna
Yes.
in Luke, the one that,
Yeah.
was that Jesus?
Is at the
Yes.
temple day and night.
Yeah.
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 What's she
they
doing
call
there?
her a prophetess. That's intriguing.
Hey, how deep do you want to go down the women in ministry role or path? Because I think there's a lot of really interesting exceptions to the rule. If men only in leadership positions is the main, is kind of the main or traditional viewpoint. I think there's a lot of really interesting women throughout the Old and New Testament who kind of break that mold in interesting ways.
Can we scratch this itch for just a couple minutes?
Sure, I'm fine with
Okay. Because let me see if I can find it. Okay, so this is who is Peter quoting in Acts chapter 2 when he's addressing all the people, and he says in 17 through 21.
Joel.
Okay, so I'll just read it. Acts chapter 2, 17 through 21. And in these last days it shall be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh.
Yeah.
And on your sons and your daughters
Correct.
shall prophesy. On your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even on my male servant and female servant, in those days I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy.
Yeah.
And so when he's saying last days, this is pause, I want to put a question mark on it. And I will show wonders in the heavens above, and signs on the earth below, blood and fire, vapor and smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood, before the day of the Lord comes, the great magnificent day. And it shall come to pass, and everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved.
Yeah.
In that, in the last days,
Yep.
all that, I think there's definitely a camp that would argue that that is a Jesus' return date, but. And I'm not going to bat that one entirely away.
I wouldn't either.
But I'm a little bit more compelled when it starts to describe what it is that's happening with the people, who is doing the things. Blood and fire, vapor and smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood. That sounds like the day of crucifixion that's described. So
I would think so.
So in that
keep
sense,
reading.
huh?
Before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord. That sounds like Jesus' return, doesn't it?
I don't know. That's my question. Is it his return, or is it his? What would be the word for it?
Yeah, crucifixion. I think we should just say crucifixion there,
Because it sounds an awful lot like what happens around the crucifixion.
Yes.
So.
And again, Paul. So not Paul. Peter's then instruction to the people is okay. He has now come.
Yeah.
The Lord has now come. So now you need to believe in Jesus Christ, and you will be, like Joel says, saved.
Yeah.
That's the name. That's the particular name of the Lord that we're going to call on.
Yeah.
Because Jesus does bear the name of Yahweh.
So that's what's interesting, kind of about we talk about it in this already not yet scenario.
Yes.
Repent, for the kingdom of the Lord is at hand.
It's now.
It is now, and not in a, we make the kingdom happen here on earth kind of thing, but no, as his people and recognizing who is the king and the authority, then it is now, as citizens of heaven. So in that sense, I'd be more inclined to believe that the great day of the Lord is, and you and I have had long discussions about this, I'm more inclined to believe that it is about the cross and resurrection.
Yeah, so I think there are 2 days of the Lord. Okay, because I think what the prophets are envisioning is can contain both what happens on the cross being the initiation, because this is Paul's language, is that the cross is the initiation of the last days. So we're in the last days.
Right.
We've been in the last days since 2,000 years ago when Jesus went to the cross. So that's how they frame it. That's the language they use. Paul's talking about the day of the Lord being initiated. We use the language inaugurated. Then we're now waiting for the king to come back to establish or be put in the rightful place as not just ruler of heaven. And I think you know what I'm trying to say when I say that.
Yeah.
In other words, his imminent local presence is in heaven currently. I don't mean to say it's not here on earth, because it is via the Holy Spirit. But there's coming a day when he returns, and heaven and earth will overlap like they were in Genesis 1 and 2.
Which is described in 1st or 2nd Thessalonians.
Yes.
Okay. Well. Both. Okay.
Yes. Second Thessalonians probably more.
Second Thessalonians is the one that I think the language that's being used to describe a first the dead in Christ will raise, and we meet them in the clouds. But all that, like,
Perusia.
yeah, the Perusia,
Yeah.
that's pretty good. But all this, like, meeting him in the clouds, well, for what point and purpose? And I think what it's directly trying to pull us to is like, hey, this is what it looks like as the king re-enters his city.
Correct.
So I think it's less of departing from here entirely,
Correct.
but I guess to tie that to what you were saying before is someone can be inaugurated as king or an authority.
Yep.
Wherever it is that happens, and then enter their city or their country
Yeah.
or whatever, or go from wherever it was they were and enter another place, and be received as king.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I would think that, like, okay, the day of the Lord, 2 days of the Lord, or is this a single event in that it has to
I
do
guess
with
that's
the
the
establishment of the king,
That's the clear way
less
of
of
putting
the
it.
day?
It's not that there are 2 days. It's that there are 2 phases to one day.
Right.
And one day is the inauguration, which then is finalized or consummated
Right.
in Jesus' return. In the same way that, well, we're reading a book about this, actually in 1 Samuel. David is inaugurated, if you want to put it that
Yeah.
way, in a quiet, secret
Oh,
ceremony.
yeah, and then he doesn't.
And then David doesn't become king for, I need to look up the time span, but there's some years that seem to pass between when he's anointed and when he actually.
That is a spooky parallel, David. That's very good.
So I think that's what's going on. So I don't, like you said, I don't want to bat away the idea that this also has some future relevance. I think it absolutely does.
Sure.
But I think what the apostles are seeing is that that's how significant the crucifixion and resurrection actually are. Is that's now the language that they're adopting, that the last days have begun.
Yeah.
And now we're waiting for the fulfillment, for the culmination of the last days, which began at the cross. So what Peter is saying there about the pouring out of the Spirit is what they just experienced.
Yeah.
In the upper room on that day of Pentecost.
So I guess to tie that to what we were saying about, like, what are these women doing in the temple? Yeah. What is the female role in ministry is kind of a big subject of debate in our culture and time.
Right.
Are we meant to view women in the Old Testament who do these incredible things as outliers or exceptions to the rules, or as not as frequently recognized representatives of what should happen? What's the right way to approach that? Because I guess a big pushback for me is, as long as we're here in this bit, is, are women allowed to teach?
Right.
Is a big, let's all fight about that one. But what do you do during Josiah's reign, when they get the law back and they're like, what do we do with this? Well, who has to instruct them on what to do with the law? How to, what is your conduct to be in right standing with God? Well, it's a woman.
That's right.
Is that an exception, or is that or has the diagram been set up in a way where it appears to be an exception?
Correct.
It's not meant to be there.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I'll say for this moment, I don't know. But I'll give my initial answer. My initial answer is that these are exceptions to the rule, because the normative expression, the rule, if you want to put it that way, the normative reality is that men are in the office of lead whatever. Okay. In the New Testament, there's a lot of debate around this. So and there are two major positions, complementarian being one of them and egalitarian being the other. Complementarian would be that men and women are equal, but they have complementary roles, and their roles are embedded into their nature. So women by nature are supposed to be led, not lead. Whereas the egalitarian position, or the mutualist position, would be that the Garden of Eden states that both men and women are to rule and subdue the earth. There's no distinction as to the hierarchy. Now, there is one that comes first, that is Adam.
Right.
And there's one that comes second, but that's not a claim of hierarchy.
Is that before or after the fall?
That's before.
So maybe after the fall, things kind of got...
Well, but so after the fall, the question is what God is saying in Genesis chapter 3, is the curse a description or prescription? And I'm of the opinion that the curse is not a prescription, it's a description of what is going to happen as a result of sin, not God saying this is what it must be
Yeah.
And there's no other way. Because otherwise, people who haven't worked by the sweat of their brow to receive food from the land, they're also sinning. You know what I'm trying to say? Because that's a specific command, if it is prescriptive, that God gives in regards to what the curse will now look like for the land, specifically how we're going to receive our food. We can't just go pluck fruit from trees now. We now have to work by the sweat of our brow, and we have all these thorns and thistles and all this stuff. And what if a woman takes an epidural today? She's now greatly reduced her pain in childbirth. Is she sinning because she's taking an epidural? I would say no. You know what I'm trying to say. I think that'd be taking it to a logical end that's absurd. That's not realistic. Yeah, you'd be greatly increasing your pain if you did that. So I think that and those are just two quick examples to use. There's a lot more to say about that, but I don't think that the Genesis 3 curse is prescriptive, meaning it's what must happen. It's a command of God. I think it's descriptive. This is what will happen as a result of the fall. That's the first moment we see a hierarchical structure. So we don't see a hierarchical structure in chapters 1 and 2 when everything's good, when they're naked and unashamed. That's the close of chapter 2. But what we see in chapter 3 is now your desire will be for him, but he will be over you. That's a part of the curse, not a part of the structure as God would deem it necessary. So then I would fast forward back to the New Testament, and I would say there are these two positions that I both have good scholarship, and both I think arrive at the text or at their conclusions honestly from the text. So I'm not going to try and snipe at one position or the other.
Yeah.
I think they're both valid positions. But because I think they're both valid positions, I think we have to do a serious look at what do we then do with the amount of exceptions that we have. It's not just Huldah. It's Ruth.
Yeah.
It's Huldah. It's these women that are working in the tabernacle. Zipporah. It's it's Esther. I mean, we could go on and on and on about
some of the female judges.
Deborah.
Yeah.
And then you're pointing out Anna, the prophetess. You're pointing out Elizabeth and Mary. You're pointing out, and then you just have to keep pointing women out in the New Testament. Phoebe, Chloe, Nympha, Junia, well known among the apostles.
Yeah.
It just there's so many women. It becomes difficult to just ignore that reality.
It's countercultural, right?
Very.
But I think that like you say, if there are strong arguments in both camps, I think the exhortation, whether you agreed with us or not, on our stance would be: don't casually arrive in one or the other. We need to do it with careful thought and study and consideration.
Yeah, and it's not just to prove my preconceived notion or desire. It's not that I come to the text and tell it what I want it to say. It's that I'm deriving my conclusions based upon the text. And which position has the better argument? Mm-hmm. That's the question.
Yeah.
And we're three guys talking about it.
And this has been a long debate.
I put out a chair for Rachel. She didn't come.
She's unable to be here today. Yeah, she wanted to, unable to be here today.
So
I think instead of spilling so much ink, sweat, and time over debating in church about who, what, when, where, and why, because here's the reality: yes, we are cool with women teaching, as long as it's not from a stage. So we have to start putting caveats on stuff a lot of the time. Because if women weren't allowed to teach in church, then we have no Apollos.
Yeah.
Who is the greatest orator in the early church? Because Apollos is taught by.
I'm thinking about Phoebe right now.
Tip of my tongue. Who the name? Priscilla and Aquila.
Yeah. Okay.
It wasn't
right.
Pete.
Yeah.
Oh.
Priscilla and Aquila are who take him aside, and it's interesting that Priscilla is always named first.
Yeah.
That's an unconventional way of doing that.
Yeah.
So we're cool, and depending on which tradition you come from, I come from a tradition where we had a piece of paper that you could clearly lay out when it's appropriate for allowing women to teach and when it's not, and we had all these
that feels legalistic.
Well, there's strange stories around the way that churches, the amount of hoops they'll put up for themselves for the sake of hearing a story from a woman, but without granting her a voice to do so.
From the stage.
Yeah, which I think really defeats. I think it I think it more than like defeats. I think it is kind of it's shameful that we would get in the way of what it is
That God's up to, the Spirit.
Yes, and for the sake of, a big one is if God does something in someone's life, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah.
I don't need to only hear that from a man. That would be that would be a strange caveat. So now that doesn't make certain instructions in the Bible go away.
Correct.
But neither do the women who are present doing the other things.
And so that's
tension.
the tension. That's the tension. And I think that wherever a church will land on that, I'm not for tokenism, whether that's a man or a woman.
Yeah.
A white person, a black person, a brown person, whatever. I don't, any identifier. I don't want to do tokenism for the purpose of, well, we need to meet a certain, threshold or mark or something like that to have the right kind of representation. Now, I think that might be like a valid or reasonable thing to want to do, especially if you're in an urban center where you have a lot of varying people groups, varying race or ethnicity. I think that would be an appropriate thing to consider. But again, I'm not for tokenism for the purpose of tokenism. The word itself is not supposed to be a good word.
Yeah.
So I'm not for that. I'm for careful consideration of all things. But I guess the big point I'm trying to make here is wherever a church lands on that, just be convinced and go forward. That's kind of how I feel about it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because the discussion at some point is going to get down into very, very, very finite Greek grammatical structure. It's going to get into very, very finite and very nuanced viewpoints on context and cultural study. And so at some point, like, whether you have a good set of scholarship and a good set of argumentation, I just think you need to be convinced in your own mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of my nail in the coffin on that on the argument itself, not on the discussion. We can keep talking about it for sure, but I'm just not convinced that women are barred from ministry simply because they are women.
Yeah, and certainly not to the extreme degrees that we've seen it displayed in.
Yeah, and again, the extreme degrees, like you said, there's a lot of backflips we got to do.
Yeah,
because like, is it okay for women to teach male children?
Yeah. Oh, that's a big one that really bothers me. It's like, well, when are we going to allow them to do it? Is it? Right. Yeah, it turns into an ugly, pretty biased thing very quickly.
Very quickly, and it's like you have to say stuff like, well, when they're 18, when they're an adult in our culture, well, that has nothing to do with the biblical culture because they're adults when they're 13. Like, I don't know what the line is at some point.
Yeah.
And at some point, as arbitrary as, or at some point, that line becomes so arbitrary it's meaningless.
Yeah.
It's just, this is what we're comfortable with.
Yes.
Versus this is what we're not comfortable with. But that has nothing to do with Scripture.
And so maybe the more, if you were sitting down in disagreement with someone over this particular issue, I think the more fruitful thing to do with the discussion would be, rather than going straight to pointing out scriptures as individuals and examples of prohibitions on things and people doing things and all that, you could go, blow for blow with somebody on that all day long.
Yep.
What it really comes down to is the way you're approaching the scriptures from the very beginning.
I think so.
It's a mode of interpretation that leads you to a conclusion, because even those examples that you use are going to bring you to separate ends depending on the lens that you're approaching it with.
100%.
So, yeah, don't argue with people.
Yeah, just Michael Heiser famously said, "Make me care." Like
line.
Make me care about this topic. Like, if your church does this or that, like, he has a position, like, he cares in some sense, but like, to the degree, again, that we're writing 600-page books where we're examining, is this little tick here in the Greek manuscript an indication of this or that? Like, make me care about that.
Yeah,
because like that's not the point and purpose is that God is pouring out His Spirit on all flesh, on men and women.
Yes,
and we have plenty of examples of both men and women being partners in the gospel message with Paul and throughout the life of the church. In fact, Rodney Stark, who is not a Christian, maybe formerly a Christian, but Rodney Stark, who's an historian of early church, of the early church, talks about the makeup of the church. The church has historically been split 60-40.
Yeah.
Women in the majority.
Yeah.
Without women of the faith, there almost is no faith.
I shudder thinking about that, because it's like, well, what do we do with people like Timothy?
Yeah.
Timothy brought up in the faith by his mother and his grandmother.
Yes.
Or even like my personal life. My mom was the one who was faithful to bring
Right.
the children to church. I'm deeply grateful for a faithful mom. Um, I I don't want to discredit women on grounds like that.
No.
But I guess to round that back to what we were talking about before is the day of the Lord. If it is on men and women, it is either what the first century church is witnessing in their day, which is what I'm inclined to believe, or even if you took the other side of it, you would then also believe that women are doing these things after Christ returns the second time.
Yeah, I would say so. That and in contrast to some of the crazy, and I don't mean say that word lightly, or and I also don't say it pejoratively. I
Right.
do think it's actually crazy. That, like the Gospel of Thomas, for instance.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this in our class that we've been doing on Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
The Gospel of Thomas, at the end, the close of the Gospel of Thomas,
Nonsense.
it's like you have to become a man
man, yeah.
in order to enter heaven. You can't enter heaven if you're not,
Yeah.
if you don't first become a man. We don't believe that.
Yeah.
Like what God ordains in creation, I would say is not an order as much. Sorry, I've got a lot of things flowing through my brain. Let me clarify that statement. God does establish an order in creation, but I think that is based upon his wisdom in the way things operate. I don't know that extends specifically or particularly to the relationship between man and woman in the Garden of Eden. There's order in the Garden of Eden in the sense of things are working in harmony with one another. I don't know that there's an established order of hierarchy. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Now, obviously, there is a hierarchy of God to man to creation.
Absolutely.
I think that's the hierarchy if you want to say that there's one.
Yes.
But I would say mankind or humanity,
agree.
not man over woman over so on and so
Yeah.
forth. And I've got a lot of research that
I think
we don't
that's a
have
good
time to
way
talk
to
about today. But anyway,
Explain that.
so what was my punchline to this?
No, I think that was it.
That was it. Okay.
I think that was it. The authority
Yeah, exactly.
trickle down is from God to mankind to creation and all that
Right,
stuff.
right.
I think that's the great summation for it. And I feel like, even though I think you and I would land in a similar position, my brain is wanting to continue playing like, well, devil's advocate on this. Like, what would you say? But I don't think we need to do that. Let's keep talking about.
No, and again, to wrap the bow and get back into the particular narrative here, we're entering into Samuel coming off of a book that's named after a woman.
Yeah.
And the beginning of this book is about a woman
Yeah.
who's righteous.
Yeah. And like Kevin pointed out, who's doing the very same thing as these other women who produce similar sons dedicated to the Lord.
So I keep pointing out these moments in the story for our congregation to kind of push back against maybe a cultural narrative that we possess more than a biblical narrative. That's
a good way to put it.
That's my point in doing that. It's more to push back against the cultural status quo, which is that in the West, it's generally men that run ministries from a top-down leadership position. I don't know that the Bible is necessarily indicating that all the time. I guess that's the way I want to say it, all the time, because we have a prime example here, the opening of 1 Samuel, that it is a woman's faithfulness that produces what God's plan is moving forward.
And to push back on any of the idea that women are portrayed in a very negative sense throughout the biblical story.
Correct.
I think, I have two daughters who have asked me questions about that because that's the impression that they've gotten from the way people talk, which I think is absolutely heartbreaking. I do a lot of work and labor to reassure them of that. And it's like, hey, wisdom itself is portrayed again and again as a lady, So there's absolutely plenty of time for women to do great things and have you get it.
And I get that there are, I'm just reading Proverbs today, Proverbs chapter 7. I get there's Proverbs, and Solomon's got a lot to say about, women and those kinds of things. But I would also say that, but let's pause and let's look at the entire narrative leading up to what Solomon says. It's not flattering on men.
No. And
so it's not like just because we have a few specific proverbs about the seductive woman or something like that now we throw all women into a particular camp.
Yeah.
Well, if that were the case, we would need to do the same about all of the men that lead up to from every book leading up to Proverbs. So like we it just doesn't need to be so totalizing.
No. Ends with Proverbs 31, which is a very good.
Kevin is killing it.
And sorry, go ahead. I'm interrupting.
No.
I'm just excited. And actually, what the beginning of Proverbs 31, which is about the noble woman, the first things that are said, I believe it's agur. I could be wrong. That might be Proverbs 30. But whoever the particular person is that's talking before we get into the picture of the noble woman in Proverbs 30, what we're told is this is an inspired utterance from his mother.
Yeah, yeah. And more than just that one. There's lots where it's like these are,
It's like, what?
oh gosh, these are proverbs from King, what's his name?
Latham? Lemuel.
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 Sorry.
Yes, it's King Lemuel.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
wise words he gets
his
from his
mother
mother.
taught him.
Yeah,
Yes. And depending on the translation, it's an inspired utterance from her.
that's very good.
So, I get that I get that women didn't write the Bible, but there's a lot of their words in there.
100%. And that kind of brings me, we can jump ahead to another question I had, in that, what, women are allowed to teach or whatever, all that stuff, if you wanted to hold that camp,
Fine.
whatever, but
Fine.
we do have to square with, time and time again, these women's words and actions are inspired by and written down as Scripture.
Yes.
Hannah has this incredible prayer that's
my.
about to happen.
Oh my.
And oh my, for like more reasons
Yes.
than I can think about right
Then
now.
it's just her words written there.
More than just like, hey, she said a nice thing that I
Yes.
agree with.
Yeah, no,
like,
she's-
no, it is inspired and I think thoughtful.
Yes.
If it was merely inspired, then she is, unbeknownst to her, reflecting what Moses says in his
Correct.
prayer over the
Correct.
nation, and also foreshadowing what Mary will pray when finding out
Yes.
she has a son,
Oh my.
which is incredible.
So important. And actually, I don't know if, I'll let you ask a question.
My question is,
Mm-hmm.
well, I guess it wasn't a question. I just wanted to point out those parallels.
Okay.
I thought it was really
Good,
exciting.
good.
We were reading it. I was like, oh wow,
I'm excited by it too.
I've heard this before, and I do think it's very interesting that we are charted towards something. You and I were
Yes.
speaking about this earlier today. That Moses' prayer over the new nation of Israel as they're going to head towards the promised land, and he prays this prayer that sounds an awful lot
Yes.
like
Yes.
structurally the same as what Hannah prays and Mary prays. Well, now we're coming down towards, we've gone from a nation. Well, now we're not quite to kings yet, but we're getting there.
Yes.
And what Hannah prays over Samuel,
Mm-hmm.
at the very least, granting him as some sort of spiritual and I think legal leader of the people at the time.
Yep.
Not quite a king, but he's functioning in these two
As a
capacities.
judge.
In a way, also as a forerunner to someone who will be both a king and a high priest. So it is, we keep talking about this funnel that goes in and out. We're doing it again.
And I don't know if you're about to point this out particularly in the passage, but Hannah is the first person to associate she may not know Genesis 3:15, snake crusher, but she is saying this even if she doesn't know it. She's associating the Genesis 3:15 snake crusher, who is this one who is to come,
Oh my word.
with the first mention of the anointed one. Now, we in English are reading this, and this is an appropriate translation of this Hebrew word. Anointed one is the appropriate translation. But the Hebrew word is Mashiach. That's what anointed means. Well, Kevin, what English word does that sound like?
She-Hulk.
Yeah, Mashiach.
I
See?
can't think of it.
Messiah, Kevin.
Oh, okay.
So no, you're fine. So this is why I'm asking, because
Yeah.
this is what I'm about to talk about this briefly on this Sunday. We're going to talk about more in the cutting room floor the following week, but I want to at least intro it here because we didn't get to Hannah's prayer this past week. She in verse 10 says, end of 9, beginning of verse 10.
Yeah, I was like, you got to do 9 and 10.
Oh, go do 9.
Yeah.
He will guard the feet of his faithful servants, but the wicked will be silenced in the place of darkness. It is not by strength that one prevails. Those who oppose the Lord will be broken. The Most High will thunder from heaven, which we actually read about this past Sunday in Samuel's bringing together the people at Mizpah, because the Philistines are about to attack, and then the Lord thunders from heaven. So I think that's really interesting. Anyways, the Most High will thunder from heaven. By the way, also comes from the Mosaic covenant moment there
Yeah.
on Mount Sinai.
Oh,
So
yeah,
she's
that's
riffing on
good.
that.
I didn't catch
Okay.
that either.
The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. Then this is important. He will give strength to his king. Not just a king, to his king.
Wait, pause, David. How does the Lord have a king?
A great question.
And it's so eerily similar to when David says, "And the Lord said to my Lord."
Yes, which is what we That's Psalm 110, correct? 101?
I don't know.
19? It's one of those prophetic psalms.
Yeah.
We know it. But what's interesting now to follow up, now to connect this with the Anointed One, and exalt the horn of his Mashiach,
That's
his
so
Messiah,
good.
his Anointed One. Hannah is the first person in the scriptures to attach whoever the Lord's king is going to be to this idea of the Messiah. So now for the rest of the biblical story, when we're talking about whoever the snake crusher will be, we are now allowed to use the verbiage Messiah because Hannah has introduced it to us.
Okay, not just to keep beating the drum of like important women of the Bible, but they keep showing up. But this isn't the first instance where a woman in a moment of prayer and provision from the Lord gives us a new name or reference for God.
Yep.
We had that with Hagar.
Hagar.
In the desert.
Yeah, the one who sees.
So good.
The only person in the Bible who gets to name God.
So good.
Yeah. And here, Hannah is the first person to call out what we've seen so far. We've talked about it in our cutting room floors. Genesis chapter 49, the royal scepter will go through Judah. Okay, there's this breadcrumb of prophetic stuff that's going on, and Hannah is now in the line of this same prophetic breadcrumb trail that's leading to who the prophets are going to identify as the cosmic king, who is the serpent crusher, who is the Messiah.
That's so good.
So she's the first one to point it out.
You're jumping back to Hannah's prayer next Sunday?
There's no time.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we're gonna have to do it in the cutting room floor. The next one. I'm gonna reference it. I am gonna reference
Okay,
it.
okay.
I apologize. Yes.
Okay.
Back to what he said, his king, is that, who is she?
Good question.
Is she prophesying that there's going to be kings, or
She
is
has to be because there is no king in Israel yet. They haven't even asked
or is
for
it
one yet.
the anointed one relating to a possible Messiah?
Both.
Yes.
Yes is the answer.
Wow.
You are right, because Samuel. That's what she's praying about. Is Samuel, right? Like that. I mean, she's praying thanks to God, but it's a thanks to God for who He's provided, which is Samuel.
Yeah.
Guess what Samuel's role is going to be? He's going to be the one who comes to help establish or usher in the kingdom of Israel, transitioning from the time of the judges.
Right.
So he is the one who is going to come and anoint two kings, actually.
Yeah.
One Saul, but the next one, King David.
So wait, we have this Nazarite guy who's going to show up to usher in the king?
Yeah.
This
John
is
the Baptist.
just John.
And again, her prayer.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah,
again,
that's
her
cool.
prayer, thanks to Kevin. Thanks to Kevin reminding us about this.
I wouldn't have caught that unless Kevin didn't say that earlier.
Her prayer is that's all Elizabeth and Mary
Yes.
are riffing on.
Yes.
Now, pause. Guess who else they're riffing on?
Moses.
Moses' prayer at the close of Deuteronomy. Not just a prayer
You're right.
at the moment
You're
of,
right.
of the rescue at the Red Sea.
Which I took that as at the end of Deuteronomy, it is a repetition for the sake of the next generation that's going in, right?
Yeah.
Or is it
Sure.
distinct in
No,
itself?
it is distinct
Okay.
in some ways, but it is sort of a what's the word? Repetition, not a representation. A repetition of what Moses initially, and Miriam, by the way, another woman, and Miriam's song.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. Back at the climax there of the rescue from Egypt at the Red Sea. But no, she's riffing on specifically Moses' song at the close of Deuteronomy, because she says that the particular phrase would be verse 2. There is no one holy like the Lord.
Okay.
There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. That is, I think, a direct quotation from Moses' song in Deuteronomy 32.
Which I think also is, I mean, not only an amazing, mind-blowing parallel, but it also informs us what type of woman Hannah is
Yes.
and Mary is. Because I do not believe that it is by accident that they're grabbing these words. I do think they are divinely inspired,
Yes.
but I also think that there's a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into these
100%.
things. In the authorship of the scriptures and the way that the people speak, and I think it is informing us that, like, Hannah isn't only crying out to the Lord because of her desperate position. She also understands what it is He has done and can do,
Yes.
and is making an appeal to the one she trusts can provide.
Yeah. So Kevin, to your question, everything you've just said about what Hannah is saying, yes, it's routing towards this establishment of the kingdom. The question is, which king? But you're right, and we know this as a result of now being on the side of Christ. But we don't know this in the story yet, so we have to keep reading to know this. But it's both and the Psalms are doing this as well. When David is giving a prophecy about the coming king, or he's talking about kings in general, it can map onto, yes, his rule in certain ways, but then there's times where it doesn't map onto his rule when he talks about eternal kingdom and eternal ruling and stuff like that. That clearly is about the Messiah that Hannah is introducing to us. So it's both and. In the same way that the day of the Lord is both and. It's both. It's both a thing that happens at the crucifixion, but it's a thing that's inaugurated that will also then be fulfilled later on when Jesus returns. So we have this already not yet framework that's already beginning. Well, it's already begun. The concept's already there as early as Genesis 49, as early as Genesis chapter 3, for that matter. But Genesis 49. But we're also seeing that same thing played out here with Hannah's prayer at the beginning of the book of Samuel.
It's so good.
Yeah. There's a lot of connectedness that's about to happen. And in fact, Samuel leading on into David, and we got to talk about Saul because I'm barely going to talk about him. And we'll do that over the next several weeks of Cutting Room. So we don't have to feel like we have to do it all today. But as we move forward in the story, we're gonna see just how important David becomes to this story.
Eli's sons. Okay, I had a couple observations about Eli's sons and how it talked about they would dip their fork into the offerings and take their own portion of what was there. And I think that it was interesting too, not just that it points out that they are living. What would the word for it be? They're taking advantage of or coercing with these women who work at the temple. That they are there. They're there for the intention of servitude to the Lord. So in that sense, it feels like they are metaphorically taking from a portion set aside to service to the Lord when it even comes to people.
Yes.
So I think that the level of, I mean, really the horrendousness of their behavior is extremely high. This is more than like pinching a few coins from the offering pile. This is the things that are laid out before the Lord and his people who come to serve him that are being taken advantage of or willingly coercing with. We don't really know.
And I think like maybe to put it in modern terms today, what these guys are doing is they are abusing people in their care. So they're using their there's an imbalance of power. So they're utilizing their position as priests of God to sexually abuse these women, and then they're also abusing their position of power to steal tithes and offerings.
Yeah. Someone very wise told me that there's like two ways of taking advantage of people. You know, you could abuse someone by force or you could use your tongue.
Yeah.
And it's like, is there a difference? Like, oh, that's heavy.
That's really
heavy. Really, really heavy. And I think maybe we could be led to believe that Eli's sons are maybe doing both.
Oh, yeah.
Taking their portion or using their position and influence for their own end.
Is there certain laws that said that they could only do certain?
There's only particular portions of meat that are set aside for the priests. I make jokes about it being a brisket in these days. It wasn't a brisket. I think it was the right front breast of the cow. So a big hunk of meat, nice and soft, tender, all that. That was what was meant for the priest. And then there's other associated laws as well. But that was kind of the main one that was set aside for them. What we're seeing here is that they are denying that law completely.
Just taking what they want.
They're just taking whatever they pull out of the pot. And it actually gets worse. Verse 15. But even before the fat was burned, the priest's servant would come and say to the person who was sacrificing, "Give the priest some meat to roast. He won't accept boiled meat from you, but only raw." So, like, the point is that God has established this particular way of doing things for his purposes. It's to display his wisdom. It's to produce flourishing, not just amongst the people, but also for the priests who are also in need of God's grace and forgiveness and atonement and all these things that we see in the Old Testament law. So what they're doing is they're going beyond just saying, well, I think I deserve this. They're actually like bold face opposing this law and saying, I'm more important than what God has given to us and what portion I should receive. And I'm going to now act as as though this sacrifice that was meant for God is mine alone.
So my question behind that is, not boiled, only raw. Is that a demand for their portion before it even gets offered to the Lord?
Yes. Before it's been burned up and sent as a pleasing aroma, an
Right.
offering to the Lord, they're taking it off of the altar.
Yeah. So they're taking their portion from the portion that's being.
It would be like if you had your tithe this Sunday and you were about to go put it in the offering, and I walked over to you and I snatched it out of your hand and I said, "Let me find the hundreds in here. You can have the rest."
Okay. Well, let me.
That's what it would be like.
Okay. What I'm wondering, why is there the emphasis on the raw? Is that just because it's before it's gone out? Because there's other parts. Paul talks about this a few times. That what is it that people are to abstain from? You know, we've been talking law a lot, you and I.
Yep.
What is it that they're supposed to abstain from? What portions of the law are they meant to follow? And I don't know if we'll be able to find it right away, but like one of the things that they are on the list of things that they're not to do. This is Galatians 5. Oh no, hang on.
Well, while you look for it, I could give you the beforehand. Acts chapter 15, the Jerusalem Council. They're told the three
Thank you.
things.
That's what I was reading today.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. Yes.
Yeah, Acts 15.
Acts 15.
They're not supposed to eat meat with the blood still in it.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
So is this because the other thing that they're in that list of things that they're not supposed to do is sexual immorality, which Eli's sons are absolutely guilty of.
Yeah.
And staying away from blood.
Yeah.
Is it trying to key us into more than just they're taking their portion before the Lord, or snatching what's theirs? Are they also is the raw bit supposed to make us go? I don't know about that.
What they want to do is they want to cook it in a different way,
In their own way.
than
Okay.
the way it's supposed to be cooked.
Okay.
So it's supposed to be boiled meat. It's not supposed. It's supposed to be a savory dish. Boiled meat is it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be thinking like braised meat. Like a. I don't have to explain that. You know what braised meat is. It's supposed to be that. But what they're wanting is to violate this law and have a barbecue for themselves.
Yeah.
Which God has not given to them. Barbecue is meant specifically for God, not for the priests.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they're essentially saying, we are.
Oh, so the priests only got a portion of boiled meat.
Correct.
The rest was
supposed to be barbecued for the Lord. Because the Lord ordains barbecue as his holy meat.
Which there's so many layers to that then, because then it could even be like, hey, you're meant to be working and serving the Lord, and he provides you a portion. Correct. I would also say, like, I don't want what you have for me. Yeah. I want what I have for me. There's so much in that. That's really good.
Yeah. Oh, it's complex.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on subtly in this text, but if we're removed from the context and culture, we just don't see it.
I am more and more convinced that there is no static ground in Scripture. No passive.
It's all saying something important.
That's incredible. One of the things that you said on Sunday that I just wanted to repeat because I thought it was so well said was the response that Eli gives after Samuel is told by the Lord to say what he's meant to say in judgment to rebuke his sons.
Correct.
Where's Eli's response? That's chapter 2.
No, it'll be after chapter 3.
Is it? You're right. You're right. He gets called.
Yeah, because Samuel then tells Eli about what the Lord told him in regards to judgment on
3:18. Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him, and he said, "It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him." You pointed out that Eli's response should have been, "I'm sorry," and to remove his sons from their position, try to set things right. And you said that we absolutely can say things that sound holy but not take godly action, or something along those lines.
That's right.
Spiritual sounding answers without godly action. And that what was the other way that you put it?
I mean, it's just hollow. Like it rings hollow. If I say a spiritual thing, but I have no spiritual content in my life, like, but it's meaningless. You know. And this is what Eli answers with. He's like, well, okay, whatever God's going to do, he's going to do.
Yeah.
As opposed to enacting what he should be doing in the first place.
Yeah.
And I, and we had people when I read, and I don't mean to like judge our people, because I think this is what it looks like on its face. what it looks like on its face is that Eli is saying a good thing. But that's, I think, what we're supposed to see from the text is that he's saying a good thing, but he's
Yeah.
not doing a good
Yeah.
thing. He's being a hypocrite.
Yeah.
And we had people in our audience this Sunday say amen when Eli gave his answer.
I gave a nod.
But it's like, wait, hold on though.
Yeah.
Because I think the text is being a little bit ironic on purpose.
Yes.
It's trying to show us that we can talk all day with good stuff. We can intend to say nice things about the Lord, but if we don't live it out,
Yeah.
it's kind of
No,
meaningless.
that moment, like, I was exactly the way that you described it. Like, you read it, I gave a nod, and I was like, oh, I've been caught in my own, like, passivity towards
Bingo.
what is right conduct look like, you know? And it's not enough. And you also had a line that was, grace is never a license to sin, nor is it a justification for cover-up.
Correct.
And I feel like that is such an important thing to communicate, not just to our congregation,
Yes.
the way that we want to see things dealt with and run here. It should be a very high standard held to the church as a whole,
Period.
because it is a grossly checkered past for history.
And I also I followed that statement with, now we should have grace for the genuinely repentant. Absolutely. I mean, this is what Paul deals with in the sexual sin of the man in 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Like put him out. Hand him over to Satan, but for the purpose.
For the purpose, and then we get him again in
Correct.
2 Corinthians.
He's now restored.
Yes.
And Paul in Galatians says, hey, if we're going to deal with people this way, in Galatians 6, he says, well, we got to restore them gently.
Gently,
Though. Like,
yeah.
if we're going to deal with them harshly in the sense of like social ramifications to their actions, consequence to the way they're acting poorly, well, then we in reverse kind have to also act graciously when they're genuinely repentant and want to come back in. So I don't mean to say that every scandal that's ever rocked a church or every checkered part of our church history means that we just cancel people outright and they're not allowed back in church or something like that. Okay. Now there might be restrictions and safeguards and things like
Absolutely,
that. You may not be back into the same exact position you were in beforehand, whatever. But what we're not saying is we disfellowship completely if someone is genuinely repentant and wants to come back into the family of Christ. So like not every instance of bad behavior in the church means that person is anathema or cursed or something like that.
Yeah.
And we don't need to treat it that way. We need to always be a people of grace. Now, we have to hold that intention with what else you said I said, which is that grace is never a license to sin or a license to cover up, because it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul himself says this in Romans 6.
Yeah, I think that there's probably a very important distinction to be made as far as what you were saying. It's like, okay, you may not be back in the same position you were in before. There might be certain safeguards that need to be in check for whatever misconduct had gone on. All of that is living wisely.
Yes.
But that doesn't withhold you from what is actually meant to be available to you, is a redemption story.
Bingo. Bingo.
So why is Eli so passive and he doesn't reprimand his kids?
It's a great
It
question.
reminds me of David and Absalom and some of the other problems he had with his kids. It's like, why isn't he doing anything? Instead, he runs away. It's like,
This is exactly, Kevin. This is I think what we're supposed to see. This is what sin produces. And there are active sins of commission, but then there are passive sins of wait, did I say it right? Yeah, sins of commission, but then there are passive sins that are sins of omission.
yeah.
And I think that this matters for us. Sin is not just the things I do that I shouldn't have done. Sin sometimes is the things I should have done that I didn't do. And so that's how serious sin is. Like, like that, like we can miss the mark by not doing anything at all. And it seems holy because, Eli says a holy thing, but it's actually unholy and rebellious because he doesn't do what he should.
This is the tension in the Good Samaritan story, when the people who don't want to be considered unclean or whatever
Correct.
make their way
We're going to follow the
around.
law.
Yeah.
Who knows? They might have even been weeping as they walked by.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But it was, air quotes, the right thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not until the Samaritan shows up and makes himself unclean for the purpose of helping this person that actually the right thing happens.
Yeah.
So, like there's a heart of the law. That's the whole point. There's a heart of the law that's founded upon God's own way of seeing and being, on his heart. And if we're not living by that heart, even if we don't have a particular law that instructs us one way or the other, then we're still sinning. It doesn't matter if it's written in the law or not. because as Saul will say, as Paul will say later in the New Testament, like our conscience is a law in and of itself, because the Holy Spirit is supposed to be speaking to us and through us. And even if we don't have the Holy Spirit within us, we have a conscience. We know what's right and wrong, because Solomon will say that we have transcendence or eternity etched on our hearts. We know deep down, I shouldn't steal stuff from other people, even if I've never heard a law about that. We know deep down that that's the case. If it's mine, it's not yours, you know, and I'll share with you, but you don't get to take it from me. So, and that's a universal reality. All cultures have known that that's the case. So yeah, but that's how deep sin is. It's not just the things I do; it's also the things I don't do when I shouldn't have done them, and that's what Eli is falling into here.
Yeah, oh, that's good.
And it's a great question, Kevin. We don't know why. We don't know why David doesn't respond. We don't know why Eli doesn't respond. But I'm assuming it's because it would be too hard. It might damage his position, his status, you know, because he's installed his sons as priests. It's not like they just fell into it, you know. So like it might damage his you know, his position. Maybe he's eating some of this barbecue. It doesn't say that, but I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, like, you know, why. I'm just trying to think through that.
Do you think it's in his mind that, like, hey, we're not actually eligible for this position? If we rock the boat too much, we lose our spot.
I think if we do careful reading of the text, I think those are some of the better conclusions we come to than just, well, we don't know why.
He's just a bad dad.
He's just a bad dad.
I guess, what are the costs for him to do the right thing?
Correct.
And the concrete wrong thing is that he's unwilling to do the right thing.
Well, because here's the deal. We have pronouncements of judgment all over the Old Testament. Like Hezekiah. Like, they're coming and they're gonna kill everybody. The Assyrians. And then Hezekiah repents, and then he says, actually, that's not going to happen. I'm going to send the deceiving spirit amongst the prophets. Sorry, I may be conflating stories. Maybe it's Hezekiah's sickness that I'm conflating right now. Hezekiah gets deathly ill. And but because of his repentance and his turning to the Lord, he's allowed to live for like 15 more years or something like that. The point I'm trying to make is God pronounces judgment multiple times in the Old Testament, and that thing never comes to pass because of the repentant heart. God responds to the repentance of the person who received the judgment call. Nineveh. Yeah. I'm going to destroy the city.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm going to destroy the whole thing. They're terrible.
Yeah.
Until they hear the word of the Lord, all 5 of them.
Yeah.
His mouth, and then they repent, and then the city doesn't get destroyed.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think there's some call and response here that God is trying to call us into.
Which is great, because God is never withholding of redemption.
That's a good way
It
of
is
saying it.
always available.
That's a good way of saying it. So I think there's an opportunity here for Eli to do the right thing, even though he's not the right priest. You know, all blah 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 blah. The reality is, though, is that he lives into the way of being he already has established, and this is why formation is so important, because it's really, really hard to repent. It's really, really hard to stop the train and to turn around and go back the other way.
Oh, what's that Lewis quote where he says, like, everyone knows if they're doing a math sum and they aren't getting the right answer, there is no backtracking. You have to start all the way from the beginning. My oldest went through that this week, having trouble with math.
Yeah.
And my wife came over and started erasing the whole thing. She's like, you can't erase the whole thing. Like, you got to start again. You got to start again. And it was a painful engagement for her. But we finished.
I feel for her.
We finished, you know?
I feel for her. Math is so hard.
Yeah. Life lessons.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, but here what we're also seeing at the same time is that even though Eli has now rejected or turned away from God in a passive sense, what God is doing is very active. He's calling out to Samuel, and Samuel's now going to be the next person that God is establishing or appointing to be the next leader of the nation of Israel, that's leading them towards the Lord.
Another example of that is when the people had turned away from God, and the Philistines took the ark, and God took care of the ark on his own. They didn't have to stand up for God's honor, and
That's what's up.
And then once the ark came back, and then they were trying to repent, you talked about that, and the Philistines attacked again. But like you said earlier, God thundered and all of that, and they got scared, and he was still willing to protect them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a visible representation of God's character that he announces in Exodus chapter 34, right? Like he is great and compassionate,
Yeah.
loving to 1,000 generations,
Yeah.
willing to forgive wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Those are the three things he says expressly in chapter or in verse 6 of chapter 34 Exodus. Willing to forgive these things. Like but how do you receive forgiveness? You don't just get forgiveness by right. You get it as a humble act of saying I'm sorry for the things that I did wrong
And change.
and change. I mean that's how you get it.
And that forgiveness is a gift. Like
That's it.
I can do wrong to you and apologize. You are not obligated
Right.
to outside of
Sure,
this
sure.
to forgive me.
In a legal sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is an extension of a goodwill and favor.
Correct.
Out of a desire of like unreconciled relationship to whatever degree that works.
Correct.
I think the being forgiven is a gift, and the ability to forgive
also
is a gift.
I agree. So, now we probably need to talk now because he's brought up the ark. We need to talk about like this whole wild story that leads up to that.
We're gonna push it till the battery dies.
Let's go.
All right, Kevin.
I like the story where the ark is taken away and it's put into the temple of Dagon, and then it's knocked over several times, and the idol is basically giving honor to. My thought when I read that is, how's that happening? That's angels, right? And are they just laughing their heads off, going, "God's great. Let's just
love it.
Let's just make it look like." He has to worship the temple representing God.
I don't know, because
so much.
I would be more inclined to think rather than it's like, hey, I'll send some angels down to deface the property of the rival god.
Yeah, sure.
I think it is more of like the Ark of the Covenant is where the Spirit of the Lord is dwelling, and I think that if we wanted to ascribe this as more than a statue and a representative,
Correct.
If we wanted to say like, hey, there is a being behind Dagon, that it has no choice but to recognize that it is in the presence of
Spiritual warfare.
yeah, that's what's going on here.
Yes.
And this isn't the first time that we've seen Dagon either.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, come on.
So I was doing a little bit of research on this because I was like, what does it matter with Dagon? I want to know more about Dagon. Dagon is the god of the temple that Samson, when he's acting as a judge, pulls the pillars down.
Of course it is.
Wow.
Yes. And when Saul falls out of favor with God, when Saul dies in battle, the Philistines capture him, they cut off his head and put his head in the temple of Dagon in First Chronicles. So Dagon is this, if we're talking spiritual warfare, we now have, I don't think it's the first time we've seen them come on the scene in 1 Samuel, the Philistines, but they're kind of the new-ish rebel group against God's people. We've had like the Amalekites and who have we had so far? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we've had the Baal and the Ashtaroths. We've
Yes.
had some of that. But...
So they're the new and one of the primary oppositions to them before they go into exile.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting that this isn't just happening between people groups. There's a very pointed spiritual warfare going on. Same as we did in Egypt when God puts the plagues or the strikes against Egypt. It's not against Pharaoh. He says that he puts them out against the gods of Egypt so that everyone will know who he is. And I think that that's the same thing that we see reflected here. While the people are some people are trying to be unified to God, and there's a rebel group opposed to Yahweh, there's a spiritual warfare that's going on, and we see that apparent. And the Philistines recognize it because they say a very similar thing, and they make a callback to the Egyptians' response to, like, surely the God in Israel is the Most High, or however it is they say it. So I just thought it was very interesting that Dagon isn't a random small idol. He's a reoccurring figure, and one that not only is defeated, but recognizes that there is a posture that is assumed even by, air quotes, the gods in front of the Most High God. And it's one face down, hands down. Like, what else is there?
So I'm doing some research here about it. we've got Dagon fallen forward, prostrating before the ark of Yahweh. Okay. Night 2, the next morning, Dagon had fallen face down again. This time, though, his head and both hands were cut off and are lying on the temple threshold. The cultural meaning is this. In ancient warfare, cutting off the head and hands of the defeated enemy king or general was standard practice to show absolute total defeat and powerlessness.
Wow.
This is what happens to Saul. That's so crazy.
And Yahweh does this inside of Dagon's house.
So good.
So so it's not even that it's like out in some, neutral territory and Yahweh barely ekes out a victory.
And I think that maybe that speaks also to not only the physical condition and ailments that the Philistines are going to, but they also recognize the spiritual opposition that they have put themselves up against.
Yeah.
Because if there's a plague of rats and tumors on people, they also brought the ark into their temple. Correct. And I think that they have to recognize, like, oh, we've made a terrible mistake.
Correct. And that's actually what they go on to talk about, because the rest is I think it's chapter 5 and for Samuel is there's a lot of transferring of the ark to different cities. Well, wherever it goes, it's calamity.
Yeah.
Like not because God's a chaotic God, but because he's enacting judgment that they believe that they have defeated Yahweh and can now cart around his presence wherever his ark is.
And it's not like the Israelites are immune to any sort of misconduct with the ark either.
Oh, 100%.
They are absolutely
they're
held to account.
Well, they're treating it like a rabbit's foot.
Yeah, and
It's like a lucky charm for them. Bring it to battle, we're going to win.
And paying the price for it. And they've done it before, haven't they? They've already done they're meant to carry it on Asher poles.
Yes.
But they put it on a cart pulled by it's the same thing the Philistines do.
Yeah.
They put it on a cart.
Except for the Philistines, it's okay. Because the Philistines don't know the law this way.
Yeah.
So they're doing their best to honor Yahweh by saying, we're sorry, get out of here, please.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that it is calves that are carrying the ark, which of course is the snare earlier in the story, Exodus chapter 33, 32. And then it will become later the same snare via the tribe of Dan in the north.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I was thinking about when they are crossing the river and they're moving the ark on a cart, and what's his name puts his hand out to
that'll
catch
be with David. That'll be with David.
That's farther down the line. Okay,
it's farther down the line. So I mean, there's a lot to say in the beginning opening chapters of for Samuel. We're going to get to more of this as we talk through our cutting room floors. So don't worry if we don't get to all of it today. We're going to be talking about this, but I think maybe like a cap-off statement is that 1st and 2nd Samuel are not merely a book that gets us to the kingdom. There are also significant theological touch points in this book. And I love the contrast that's going to be played between Samuel as a judge and the former judges. The contrast between the people's vision versus what God is going to provide for them. And his vision. The contrast between Saul and David. I mean, there's going to be so many interesting things that we're not going to have a lot of time to get through in the sermon series. So keep watching the cutting room floors because we're gonna really talk about this more.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Cutting Room Floor. If you have any questions or want to know more about what we discussed, send an email to Church on the Rock. Like and subscribe to receive notifications for any videos we post. May God bless your study of His Word.